Welcome to the Dana Grant Show, where heart-centered stories, authentic connections, real talk, and real action come together. I'm your host, Dana Grant, and I believe in the boundless potential within each of us. Join me as we dive into transformative conversations that not only inspire growth, but compassion with a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us. Let's embark on this journey together, unlocking all the power within and creating a life of purpose and fulfillment. This is the Dana Grant Show, where your story matters and your voice is heard, and I cannot wait to dive in. Welcome back to the Dana Grant Show, where we are focused on heart-centered connections, and today I have such a special guest. I have been wanting her on my show since the beginning. She's been on the master list. And welcome, Rebecca Zung. Now, Rebecca is a high conflict negotiating expert. And I'm just going to read this. She is created the SLAY method, and we're going to talk about that. But she's one of the top attorneys in the US. You're going to want to hear this conversation, and you're going to want to listen closely. I'm going to zip it today, and I'm going to listen too, because she has so much to say. And not only is she a thought leader and a master negotiator, but she helps people reclaim their power, and not only to thrive. You can find her everywhere. Forbes, I don't think there's a magazine you can open that she hasn't been in. She's featured everywhere, and I'm thrilled to have you today, Rebecca. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you're here. So tell me, let's go back to the beginning. I'm going to go back to what made you want to be an attorney?
Mm. Well, I always say I'm half Chinese and half German, so I have no fun genes whatsoever. And my father was a doctor, so in Chinese, and he had gone to Columbia and all of that. And so, there weren't a whole lot of acceptable choices in my household
Mm,
as far as career choice. So I originally actually was a teacher. Most people don't know that. But I had
no.
gotten married at such a young age, and then I had kids at such a young age. I had my first at 20, and I had three kids by the time I was 23. And then I got divorced. But when I went back to school to finish my college education, I just chose to be a teacher because I wanted to be with my kids.
Yeah.
And I really only did that for, I don't know, 6 years or something. But then I got divorced and I went back to law school. I was still so young. I was still in my 20s. And so I was a divorced single mom going back to law school at night. But at the time, it
Mm,
was sort of like, okay, I got to put a roof over these kids' head, food on the table. I was making
yeah.
$26,000 a year in a inner city public school at the time, and it was like 1997 or something at that time. And then I went back to law school, and it was really more like survival mode for me at that time.
Right. Wow. I look at where you started. I did not know that you went back, the divorce, that's when you went back to law school. But do you think that hardship and that those learned moments led you? I mean, I keep looking down to your number one bestseller, Slay the Bully. Everyone needs to get this book, Slay the Bully. This is how to negotiate with a narcissist and win. This really solidified you as a leader. Now, here we've got this amazing law career, number one in law. And
Oh,
then
yeah.
you've got this. How did that connect? How did you bridge that?
Well, I knew that I wanted to do something else because I had written my first book, which was Breaking Free, and that kind of started
Yeah.
opening doors for me. And that was back in 2013 that I wrote that book. But from there, I had started to do some major media, and I started to be featured on some big television shows like
Yeah.
TMZ and that sort of thing on when big divorces would break and
Yeah.
Extra and that. And it was then that I started to think, I do want to do something else. I'm tired of, I loved building the practice. I didn't enjoy the grind of the day to day. And I really had gotten to a
Right.
point where I was on sort of like this hamster wheel of just, whatever. And I really knew that I was more of an entrepreneur at heart.
Mm.
So in 2017, we moved to California mostly, and we still have a place in Florida. I kept my business in Florida, but I knew then that I didn't want to take the bar in California. I didn't want to just start recreating that same old life of no life, basically. And my daughter was just starting high school at the time. I knew I had very little time left with her, so I wanted to spend it with her.
Mhm.
And so I was looking for something else. And so I was starting to learn about YouTube, and I was starting to learn about digital courses and all that sort of thing. But in the meantime, I was getting involved with other entrepreneurial endeavors, and I got involved with one of them with a business partner who turned out to be a covert narcissist, which I didn't even know what that was. And so now this is like 2019. I'm getting out of that situation.
Yeah.
And I wrote my second book then, which was Negotiate Like You Matter.
Was
But
there
that,
any fallback on that book when you identified that you were in with like that covert narcissist and business partner? Was there any backlash of you called me or
well, I've really tried to stay away from being specific with the details because,
right?
I don't want that. But I knew I was it was July of 2019 that I was standing on a mountain in Maui. And it was called Mount Haleakala.
Mhm.
And I was there with my daughter and my husband. And my daughter leaned over and she was like, "Oh, mom, it's like heaven on earth," because it was like sunrise and it was so this beautiful experience. And all I could think about was this narcissist, and it was just, and in that moment, I had this like aha moment of, "Oh my God, you don't get to be here with me on
So how,
vacation."
So how did you identify that this was a narcissist? I mean, a lot of people live this life like we talked earlier. We know
Mhm.
that 95% of what we do is subconscious and 5% is conscious. How did you identify that you were dealing with a narcissist and
I
how did you
didn't
find your way
know.
out of that on that top
Well, I
of that
didn't know
mountain?
she was a narcissist. I just knew that I was miserable, and every
Yeah,
moment I gave her, I was being a victim. And I decided, so the person who
yeah.
walked up that mountain was a different person that walked down. Because in that moment, I'm like, oh my God, I'm allowing myself to be a victim. I got to get out of this thing. So I decided, I came back from vacation. I told this person, I no longer want to be in business with you. I'm going to go a different direction. And I really try to keep it friendly and nice. And but
How'd that work with the narcissist, a covert?
of
How did that
course, of
work?
course, no. Like you can't
Yeah,
do it, right? I mean, no matter what, they've got to turn it into a thing. They've got to turn it into a
yeah,
competition. I'm going to
yeah,
show, I'm going to be better, da, 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 whatever. And so
yeah.
I ended up writing Negotiate Like You Matter from that. And I sent it out for testimonials. And Robert Shapiro wrote me back and said, call me. And so I called him and he ended up writing the foreword for the book. And
Wow.
then I started on YouTube right after that. And I was doing negotiation in general.
Mm.
But then in January of 2020, I did one video on how to negotiate with a
Okay. And
narcissist.
let's slow down around that. 50,000 views and 2 million downloads.
Oh
You
no,
hit,
50 million views.
yeah,
50
50
million
million
views.
views. Yeah,
Yeah.
you hit a chord and the whole world vibrated after that. I mean, that's an enormous message that went out there. One video opened the door to
Hmm.
how I met you. Well, we'll go into that later, but it's like
Yeah.
it vibrated here too. It's like, who is that? What is she talking about? And you actually put a name and a description and an energy. I think everything is an energy to it that I understood.
Mm.
It was
You know,
like,
I often
yeah.
wonder if that's like my elementary school teacher,
Mm,
like training that I'm able
yeah.
to kind of break things down for people in a way. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, my first videos, I had like 30 views a video. It was literally my mom and her church friends. That's it. My mom's 83, like your mom.
Yeah.
And she literally was like, "Oh, I watched your videos. I told all her church friends, all my church friends to watch." I'm like, "Oh, thank you." Like, like really, this is not going to build a business for me. So, I did the video on how to negotiate with a narcissist. I got like 700 views, which at the time was a really good number for me. And so I um was like, okay, maybe I'll do some more content around this. Honestly, I really wasn't like loving being the narcissist queen, like the idea of that. But honestly, I got started to get so many messages and so many DMs and so many emails and all this about you saved my life. I was going to commit suicide and now I'm not going to. I like crazy messages like that that were, oh my God, I believe very
You
much.
were prepared for all that energy coming your way of how important your message was and how
Yes.
many people it reached. I mean, I never told you. I was like, what is she talking about? What is going on here? I felt like I was in the twilight zone. And then I identified in my own life what situation that I could identify. I went to the core wound, then the person, and all the things that I repeated after that, and it was earth shattering. I
Hmm.
had to reconstruct everything, but
Yeah.
not to interrupt
Yeah.
you, but it was, yeah, it's powerful. It's
I
powerful.
don't know if you've ever seen the episode that I did with Ben Newman, but he talked about his dad in there and like he was literally like emotionally
I did see
crying.
it. And
Yeah.
yeah, Ben and I were speaking and we just talked about Amberly's event last year, and
Yes.
I adore him. Yeah. It's so
Yeah.
funny you brought him up because he'll be on after you, and there are
Well,
no
it's so
coincidences or
powerful
synchronicity. Yeah.
he's this tough guy. He's like he's a trainer. He's really great. He's done a lot of personal development. But then when I coached him basically on air, it was really really powerful for him. I mean, I just truly believe that I've been chosen. I'm a conduit for the
Yeah.
universe, for the spirit, for God, whatever you want to call it, because it just comes through me. Like I just believe that everything that happened in my life was a
Yeah.
confluence of events that was meant to be, and
Yeah.
I'm meant to do this.
Your own personal transformation, was it just the business partner that you identified, or did you identify in other areas of your life too?
Well, so um, my husband and I had done some therapy, some counseling, and this person who was in our lives,
Mhm.
and we're great now, my husband and me. So, I don't want to put anything out there that we're not. But
Sure.
but he had identified that particular therapist that we were going to that I was dealing with covert narcissists, or that there was one in our family, and that there was um and that this other person that I was dealing with was one. And I was like, well, it's a covert narcissist. And I originally pushed back on him and I said, I think that they're just insecure. And he was like, okay, well, this will be our hypothesis. He's like, if I'm wrong, we'll know it, and if I'm right, we'll know it. Like he wasn't like, oh yeah, I'm definitely right. He just was like, okay, here are the characteristics, and
Mhm.
and he recommended some books for me to read, and he was like, we'll see. And so I read a book called The Covert Passive Aggressive Narcissist and by Debbie Mirza. And I
Mhm.
remember being on the airplane, and it was December of 19, that I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I literally was like exclaiming out loud
Mhm.
about the people that I was dealing with. And
Right.
that was really the eye opener for me. And that's why in January of 2020, I did my first, because what I first started to do was, because I was still practicing law part-time at that point, was apply what I was learning about all of this to what I had already known, which is negotiations. And during this period, like when I first moved out here, I actually became a life coach. So I went through the whole IFC life coaching training as well. And so that's why I said, like, everything I've done and
Yeah,
everything I've
it
been
just,
through has been a
yeah,
confluence of
yeah,
events. I was even bullied as a kid, and I think that if you have, situation like my mom has also had some issues or whatever. And so I think that when you are imprinted as a kid to, okay, you can hustle, you've got to hustle for your worthiness. I can
yeah,
just show them that I can be better. I can prove that if I work harder or if I'm just more loving or more accepting or more this or more that, then they'll see my value, kind of a
yeah.
thing, right?
Do you think that people with worthiness issues and perhaps that get the message that they have to work harder for their value, do you think they call that in? And secondary,
Yes.
this is a two-part question. For the people out there that aren't learned in understanding that what is, because I mean, I had to Google it on what's a narcissist, what's a covert narcissist, what is a, malignant narcissist, what is a covert narcissist? How can people identify a covert narcissist and who are the people that call that in?
Well, so let me just start with the calling that in part of it because I love that phrasing of it. I think it's definitely subconscious and
Yeah.
it has to do with our imprinting. It has to do with what's familiar
Yeah.
to us. And so we don't think that we're worthy of love or we don't think that we're worthy. And so what happens is we think that by healing that person or by achieving that acceptance from that person, it's going to heal the wounds that we
Mhm.
have inside of us. And if I can just make this work, if I can just get them to, see, then I'll be healed. Then it'll subconsciously heal those wounds. And of
Right.
course, it never does because you can never give them enough. There's always this black hole inside of them. And so a covert narcissist is really no different than a overt narcissist. It's just how they go about things that's a little bit different. So, but inside, in their core, they feel totally and completely empty. It's a black hole that's inside of them. Have to get all of their value from external sources. They're both where there's this what I call diamond level supply, which is their image, or coal level supply, which is
Mhm.
their manipulation factor. It's just how they go about it that's different. So the
Mhm.
overt narcissist to me is like the grandiose, which is also the I call it the garden variety kind because it's the only kind I thought actually existed before, which is the demanding the best table when they get into the restaurant.
Mhm.
Everybody knows when they've arrived because they fill the room. They're holding court. They're very
Mm.
impulsive. They brag about their achievements. The conversation always has to revolve around them. It's like that to me, I thought a narcissist was a male bragging, sort of misogynistic, blowhard. That to me was a narcissist. I
Yeah.
didn't know that a covert narcissist existed or that women could be narcissists or anything like that. So, but what a covert narcissist is, they're much more cunning, actually,
Yeah.
much
I was
more
going to say,
stealth.
wouldn't you say that they use diplomacy to tell stories and perhaps tear someone else down so they can
Yes.
elevate? I noticed that a lot with it's like, oh,
Yeah.
you can't elevate unless you use diplomacy and sometimes religion and God, whatever it takes, whatever it takes.
Well, they might say something like, wow,
Yeah.
that's really great that you've lost all that weight. That's
Yeah.
amazing. I mean, too bad
Yeah.
about the stretch marks, though, that you have. I mean, but
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
or congratulations on your job promotion. That's so exciting for you. I mean, it's great. I mean, especially given your background. I
Yeah.
mean, um, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
I love that you're giving some analogies of what that looks like because I think people need to identify because it doesn't feel good.
no,
You know it doesn't feel good, but you don't know why they're saying what they're saying. And yeah, I love
yeah.
that. Yeah, that
And
you're
so you
showing up.
end up feeling kind of like crap every time you're around them. And there's this
Yeah,
underlying um, competition with them all the
one
time. Or,
upmanship. Yeah,
yeah. And so if you get something good, like you get to, I don't know, be on a really great podcast or television show, or something good happens to you or
yeah,
whatever, it's like, oh, well, congratulations.
yeah,
So great,
yeah.
and you can just tell that they're not really happy for you.
Right.
You just get that feeling that they're just not. And but then if you call them out on their behavior, I call them the pearl grabbers. Like, what? Me? I grew up in Northern Virginia, so it was like kind of some of the South there. They're just like, "Ah, I have no idea what you're talking about." I don't know how you didn't end up on that email chain. I thought you were there. I was wondering why you weren't at that meeting, but I thought you were. I could have sworn.
Yeah.
I
Have
mean,
I unfriended you? I don't know how that happened. It must be a fluke. It must be so. Yeah, there's all those little stories that
right.
you can't connect the dots. How do
Yeah.
you think, Rebecca, that not only do they show up, what is their primary feature, but most importantly, how do they hide?
So they come across as super kind, very good people, altruistic a lot of times. I mean, they may be the first one that shows up with big baskets of food at the hospital if somebody's sick or whatever. But it's very, if you know who they are, you'll see
Mhm.
it's always in a manipulative way, or there's some hidden incentive or motive going on
An
behind it,
agenda, yeah.
some agenda, right? I mean, it's not just to be that good person. It's where's the show? If is there, and everyone's seeing this, or maybe it's to show whoever it is that they're targeting. Look, I can be closer to this person than you, or
Mhm.
I can manipulate the people around you. Like there's always some agenda going on with it. There's not like it's not out of the kindness of their heart. And then what we'll do is they use this kindness. Let's say they're always, I always say that narcissists either show up as heroes or victims, right? And
Yes,
so they're
yeah.
either the hero, they're helping, they're there, but then they want, where's my withdrawal? Where do I gave you the deposit. How can I withdraw on this? It's always transactional for them, very transactional. But then
Good point. Really good
there's this
point.
guilt factor. So a covert might be like, oh, I did so much for you. I've been there for or I can't believe you're just leaving me alone on this holiday.
So a lot of gaslighting going on and a lot of
Yeah.
confusion and chaos around it so that people can identify. It's like the,
Yeah, yeah. Gaslighting is used by all narcissists. And what gaslighting is actually, and I love to actually start with how the word came about because it makes it really easy for people to understand. It
bravo.
came from a movie, that was actually also a play called Gaslight, and the husband was trying to make the wife think that she was going crazy. So he would,
1949, one of my favorite movies, it's
yeah, so he would blow out these gaslights. And she would be like, wasn't that just lit? And he'd be like, no, no, it wasn't. And so what gaslighting is an attempt to make you think that you're crazy. So it's invalidating your senses in some way. So whether it's your memory, your feelings, oh, can't you take a joke? After they just said something about your fat ass or whatever. Oh, come on, I was just joking. Well, it's not funny. And or they might say announce at a picnic, oh, so and so is she's not having dessert, she's on a diet, and you're not on a diet, but it's just meant to like, oh, come on, can't you take a joke? I was just kidding. Jokes like that at your expense,
Yeah.
or saying things like, oh, we talked about that and you agreed. Remember? You don't remember?
So they kind of set you up for reactivity, especially if you're unhealed and you're reacting to set it straight. There's no, would you agree there's no setting it straight? You think everything's okay, and it's like Groundhog's Day. It just repeats over and over again. You're back in the same position of being misunderstood or
Yeah, well,
misdirected.
that's almost like a word salad kind of a thing where, you think you've got something resolved and you've proven to them, like one of the examples I have in my book, I think, is where a husband might accuse the wife
Yeah.
of cheating and going out to dinner with somebody else, whatever, and she'll be like, "No, I was with my sisters, and here's pictures of us, da da da," and then he's like, "Okay," and then an hour later, "I can't believe that you cheated on me. I can't believe that you went out with these people, and whatever," and it's like, "Oh my God, we just literally had this conversation. I don't even know what's going on over here."
So how can
Um,
you disengage from that wanting that offense defense of response? How can you like perhaps use a statement of affirmation or just say, "Oh, isn't that so interesting? You're doing that to me." What would
Yeah,
that
there's
look
so
like?
many of those. Okay, so
Yeah.
first of all, I'm gonna say I'm half Chinese, so I always wear jade because my middle name is the Chinese word for jade. And so, but I'm gonna tell you, never jade, which is never justify, argue, defend, or explain. Because first of all, it gives them supply. Now you're in it. You're pulled in, dragged in, sucked into the mud, the vortex of toxicity, right? And they're gonna say things to try to make you jade, but
Mm.
you just gotta stay out of that trap. That's a trap. Okay.
It's
They
trapped.
they go fishing, they bait you, and then they reel you in like with the big hook in your mouth.
Yeah.
So never justify, argue, defend, or explain. And then the next thing I say is to put an invisible shield down around you, like an imaginary invisible bubble, and you start to see them as if they're a toddler having a tantrum on the floor, because that's
Mm.
basically what they are. Um, and I can go into the brain chemistry of how a narcissist was formed. I'll do that in a second. But this next thing I tell people to do is to just start looking at them and start observing their behavior to them. So you can just
Mm.
say, oh, I can see that you're angry. I can see that you're upset. I can see that maybe something is
Yeah.
off with this conversation. But it's almost like you're reporting the news. I just like picture like a microphone. And you're just observing. Okay,
Yeah.
but that's on you. That's over there. That's not here. I'm not involved with that. Your triggers are your responsibility. My triggers are mine. I'm not involved with whatever that is going on
Yeah.
over there. But I can demand respect. No matter who I am, I can
Yeah.
demand, if it's your daughter, sister, mother, whatever, it doesn't matter. You can demand respect. Human being, respect. So you could just say, hey, listen, this approach is not working for me. We can continue this conversation later when emotions have calmed down.
Mhm.
And you just say it just like that, very matter of factly, very
Mhm.
briefly, very firmly, but matter of fact. Because that way you can literally just go, it ain't me, honey. It's over there. It's you. Happy to have this conversation later. And I like, that's interesting. That's a good one. The way I call that is instead of getting angry, get curious. So
Yeah.
you just be like, oh, that's interesting. What makes you say that? Oh, that's interesting. Why do you think that?
Yeah.
And not from a like sarcastic point of view, but just really
Yeah.
like get curious, like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. Because again, you're not taking it personally. You're just letting it roll off of you. You're like
Mhm.
Wonder Woman with the bullets off of your wrists, or Superman with the
Right.
bullets off of your chest. You're just like, that ain't me. And then the other thing I say is SOS, which is stop, observe, and then state. So stop what you're doing, take a breath, take a pause, observe, and
Mm-hmm.
then state what you're going
Mm,
to say.
right.
And just even that one pause, that
Right.
one breath, it just kind of reduces your cortisol level and helps you to think from your prefrontal cortex instead of your limbic brain.
Yeah. And that's something we can all apply. I mean, not all of us are a top 1% attorney with master negotiating skills that think like on the fly, on our feet to deal with, because it's rapid fire when a narcissist is activated. There's rapid fire because what would you say their goal is? I would say they want to win. What would you say? They want to win.
No, they want to continue to get supply. So winning
Ah,
is only part of it. Winning is only half the battle. And that's why people can't get out of it because sometimes they think, well, I'll just let them win. I don't care.
yeah.
They can take it
Yeah.
everything. But then they still aren't out of it. And the
Right.
reason why is because they want that supply. And so that whole level supply, which is manipulating you, seeing you
Mm,
squirm, making you sweat, all of that is all part of that control piece. And as long as they're getting some kind of supply from you,
right.
they're like drug addicts, right?
Yeah. Brilliant.
They'll take it from wherever. As long as there's something to be had from that, they're going to take it, and they'll come back. They'll come back
I
for
I
more.
love that. That's brilliant right there. I think that the immediate is I need out of this, let them win. But actually you're negotiating with supply and demand. And if you keep supplying it, the demand will always be there. I love that. Where does a sleigh method come into this? Because I think this is brilliant that you created it. So tell us about, let's start there. What is a sleigh method? Tell us about that.
So it's a way of dealing with, communicating with, or handling narcissists. And before I even get into that, I think it's important for me to just give a 60-second primer on how a narcissist was formed because it makes it so much easier for you to
Yes.
realize, okay, this
Bravo.
is why I need the sleigh method.
Yeah.
So when we as humans are dealing with a stressful situation, something that
Right.
puts us in a state of fear or overwhelm or whatever it is,
Right.
our bodies release hormones, which are adrenaline and cortisol. Well, what happens with
Mm,
children, it's the same thing, regular, continuous basis. They're exposed. Let's say it's neglect or abuse, or even witnessing abuse, or they feel some kind of something going on where they're in
mm,
stress. It could even be overindulgence, by the way. Then what happens with children is that regular release of cortisol, which is supposed to help us fight off bears or whatever, but our brains don't know the difference, um, actually causes arrested development in the limbic system part of the brain. And so what happens is while the prefrontal cortex, the thinking, judgment, reasoning part of the brain continues to develop, that limbic system does not. And so they really are like 2-year-olds stuck in adult bodies. And so when they get triggered as adults, which
mm,
can be from anything, and it doesn't have to be rational, it doesn't have to be reasonable, it's usually not. It could be an eye roll, a tone of voice, a thing that you said, whatever, but they think they're going to be exposed or you're going to lose control or whatever it is. Now that limbic system takes over and literally shuts down the prefrontal cortex. That's gone. That's not functioning at the moment. They're only functioning from pure emotion, pure emotion. And that's why you can't negotiate with or communicate with a narcissist in the same way that you can a rational, reasonable person, because they will literally take themselves down to take you down, because they only think in
mm,
terms of immediate gratification. They're not
right.
thinking about the impact of their behavior. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So identifying all of that, knowing where that comes from, and
And
then
so if you're and they're and the way a narcissist thinks is you're either for them or against them. And they
yes,
turn on a dime. And if you're
huge point. Say that again. That is we're gonna reframe that. That's huge.
Yeah. So the way a narcissist thinks is you're either for them or against them.
Yeah.
And they turn on a dime. So the minute you're against them, then that's it. You're public enemy number one. And
Yeah.
now I got to take you down before you take me down. I got to tell everybody how bad you are before you can smear me. So
Yeah.
they're going to turn it around so that they're the victim and you're the offender.
Right.
That's how it goes with them.
How would you handle that? So we know so many people out there, and I see it. Let's just go social media, where you know someone's having a conflict, and they kind of share a little bit, and they're trying to defend themselves. Would you recommend defending, or do you just allow people to believe story, even if it's
No,
detrimental,
you
to believe
can't.
the
Don't
stories?
don't don't try to go. You're never going to get to every single person and
Yeah.
convince them. I mean, that's just a weak position, honestly.
Yeah.
That keeps you in victim mode,
Right.
right? So you want to be
Right.
on the offense. You want to be in I am in victory mode. I am the
Yeah.
person who knows who I am. And
Yeah.
I often liken it to Glinda the Good Witch in Wizard of Oz. When the Wicked Witch came around,
Love her.
yeah, she was like, "Go away! You have
Yeah.
no power here, please."
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you're like
Please, please,
a,
you've got no power here.
you
Yeah.
have no power here. And so it's like that. You just want to be like, I'm not going to go around because the people who are your people, I always say, stop trying to make not your people your people. Some people are your people
Mm.
and some people are not your people. And that's okay. I mean, you're never going to have 100% of the people love you. That's
Mm.
fine. I'm
Yeah.
totally good with that
And
now.
sometimes the narcissists, they're so charismatic, are going to influence
They will.
people,
They
and you
will.
have to be okay with that. You have to be
Just gonna have
okay.
to be okay with that
Yeah.
because you find your tribe, find your vibe tribe, right? Rumi said, "Set the world on fire, seek those who fan your flames." And so you want people who are going to be, "Hey, I got more logs. Let me throw them on your fire for you. Let's make it
Yeah.
brighter." You don't want people who are coming along with the fire
Yeah.
extinguisher or the hose or whatever, dousing water
Yeah.
on it. It's like when you're in with those people, they ain't
Yeah.
your people,
Yeah.
right?
And you also know when you're showing up and you're trying to prove who you are, and because
Yeah.
you're trying to offset a story, or when I mean I see it a lot, and I'm like, release it, stay in your lane, be like a racehorse with blinders. don't don't be voyeuristic, don't go out there and look for it, just stay in your power. And if people bring stories to you, just say, for me, it's so interesting. What's so interesting about this is that, listening to you, I am going to share a very personal story now. This is the podcast is about you, but maybe you can help me process this. It is weighing on me a little. It is my second letter. It is a very, very dark letter that is tearing me down. It's not signed, it's anonymous. It's my second one, over 7 years. I think I know where it's come from. I think I know the source. I've chosen not to publicly post it or denounce this. I just want to move on. But
Some kind of hate
I
mail or
see,
something.
what's that? What's that?
Some kind of hate mail or
Oh
something.
yeah, it came in the mail. I got back from a really great trip, and it was sitting on my computer, and my housekeeper, and I'm like, I read it, and I mean, it's dark. It's dark. I did read the first one on women's summit. I was doing a sphere of influence for women. I was a keynote. I chose not to do my keynote. I chose to read this letter, burn it, and say what our sphere of influence is each other, and that this stuff can't impact, because that letter could have taken me down at that time, because it was so hurtful. This time I just said, isn't it interesting? But it's still niggling me a little bit, because I know it's being shared out there, and the first one was shared to people of influence. So what
Mm.
would you say of someone who is rising in the world and doing good work, but someone it's just a constant tear down, and you receive a letter like this? I'm not going to say the details. It's as dark as you can possibly imagine.
Well, when I first started on this platform, this whole like, and obviously I've got people out there that say things I don't even know. I don't even look at it.
Yeah.
But I remember my business coach who's had a lot of influence on me. I've had her for 15 years.
Mm,
And she's one of my dearest best friends too. She said to me that when she first started doing some work, that her coach said to her, well, you're not big enough to have haters yet.
mm,
So it's sort of like once you get to a certain point, expect them.
mm.
And
So it's
because
part of the process. It's
that
like,
means that you're now having more of an impact.
yeah,
It means that you are now to the level of there's somebody out there who's actually, haters are actually admirers, right? Because they're paying attention.
and perhaps threatened
They're
by,
threatened,
yeah,
right? Yeah. I mean, nobody who's uh, doing better than you or whatever that means is, but
yeah,
a successful person isn't a hater, most of the
right,
time because they're like, they know the world is abundant.
yeah,
And
exactly.
so,
And you're right, this hater's paying attention. They're paying attention to my mom and her, her little 11-acre ranch that she runs by herself and built this house. They called it a mobile home. And I'm like, what? It's a
so,
beautiful
I just
home.
say
It's, yeah.
send
And
them
I'm like,
light
yeah,
because they need it.
yeah, because they need it. They need it.
But you send them light, but over there. And you pray for them, and then that's it. You don't give it any more of your time or attention. Whatever they're going to say, it's like the Mel Robbins. Let them,
I love
because
that one. Oh my gosh, that was one of my favorite ones. Outside of
yeah,
watching your narcissist videos, let them uninvite you. Let them say, I love that. Let them. Let them.
let them, because what are they? You're not going to stop them, but your
Yeah.
people are your people. Like we were talking about Amberly before we got on here. Like
Yeah.
I don't ever worry that Amberly is saying something bad about me or vice
Oh,
versa. You
no.
know,
Yeah.
because she's one of my best friends.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. That light is, yeah, it illuminates.
yes,
You just know her integrity that when you're not in the room, she's not going to edify you, but she's going to glorify you and say,
glorify
yeah,
you.
yeah,
And vice versa. Anybody I can
yeah,
talk to about her,
yeah,
like
yeah,
I'm happy to because she's amazing. And
yeah.
so, I mean, I flew down to her event just for one night,
I
just
know. I
we're
know. I
like
couldn't
best
believe you
friends.
were leaving that same day.
She
I couldn't
came
believe,
in and did my book launch, I mean, like I
yeah,
don't ever worry that she's not my people. I
yeah.
never have that concern.
I
And
know.
so like that's where you got to get to. Like that you've got your people.
Yeah,
And those are your people. And you just focus on pouring all of your light and your love and your energy into them. And then everybody else, you can just send them light, but over there, it's not you, it's them. And if there's anything that you ever need to clean up for your own integrity, like clean
yeah,
it up. Like,
yeah,
I'm not perfect. There's times that I have to be held to
yeah.
account for things.
Right.
Fine. But if they're going to be a coward and not say, hey, here's where I want you to be held to account because you wronged me in some way, so
Or even sign the
giving
letter.
you an opportunity to clean up
Yeah,
whatever integrity, then it's
yeah,
not on you.
yeah. I love that. I love that. And my only trigger would be I think they hide behind God a lot of scripture. And I think let it go, let it go, let it step back, pray, step back, send love. And so what you said is exactly what I do. But let's face it, there is no perfection. It can be a struggle. I don't think that I think that people think it's so easy because of maybe perhaps what you do or perhaps what I do. It still can be a challenge.
I mean, I say in the opening of my podcast, sometimes the first negotiation you have to do in the morning is with yourself for your own self-worth or your own like beliefs or whatever. It's like it's always a
Yeah.
thing. But once you start to
Yeah.
see that those
Yeah.
are the committee, the committee of voices in your head that aren't helping you, you can go, okay, I see you over there, but that
Yeah.
ain't me, and you don't get a voice today. I'm in control over here.
Oh, I like
And
that. You don't get a voice today. You silence the, yeah, you don't get a voice today. I love that. I call it my table, my kitchen table, the people that I call in that I consult with, and some are
yeah.
no longer living, but those discussions are very worthy because we sometimes need to challenge our own thoughts.
Totally we do. Totally we do. And I mean, I remember when I was going through this business partner situation, and I was like, oh, I feel like the only way that I can make money is through being a lawyer. I guess I can never make money in any other way, and I just felt so let down about that whole situation. And I went back to that
Right.
same business coach. And the first
Right.
thing she said to me was, it's not what anybody else is saying, it's how it lands for you. And cleaning up your own feelings of worthiness inside,
Right.
because Glinda the Good Witch isn't caring what Wicked Witch is saying about her. She didn't care. So you're
Yeah.
just like cleaning up within yourself. And then the next thing that she said to me was, it wasn't the law practice that made the money, it was you.
Yeah.
So she's like, you
Yeah.
think when you start something else, you need someone else, but you don't. You're a badass. Go do your
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And I
I
was
love
like,
that.
oh, yeah. So then I went on and from there, I made another seven-figure business, but
Right.
I was able to do it because I was like, oh yeah, it wasn't the practice that made the money. I had to like do something. Obviously, something I
Right.
did was right.
It was my
So,
energy, my attraction, but isn't it funny how
yeah,
we can almost gaslight ourselves into believing that we're
we do.
powerless? And when I love that because we have the power all along. And
We do.
we started to touch on the sleigh method, which
Oh,
is a
yes.
high
Yeah, let me
conflict,
go into
yeah,
that.
high conflict negotiation. And I think a lot of people live in high conflict.
Well, I mean, it's definitely increased over the last several years. And
Yeah.
so, SLAY is strategy, leverage, anticipate, and you.
Yeah.
And it's for formal negotiations, but it's also for if you're dealing with, I've coached people where it's not a formal negotiation, but they just need to know how to handle a person. So strategy is creating that vision. That's your GPS. What is it that you want? And not in terms of what the other person is doing. Like you don't say, oh, I just want them to leave me alone, or I just want
Right.
them to have justice, or whatever it is. It has to do with you. What is your vision for yourself? Want to
Mhm.
live on the beach. I want a hot boyfriend. I want, whatever. I want somebody who connects with me. What is it that you want from your life? Or what is it that you want from this particular situation, this negotiation? So if it's a business partnership, I want to take over the business. I want them out. I want to, keep my clients. Or is it a divorce? I want the house. I want the kids. I want, what is it? Whatever it is. Okay. Be specific though, because the universe cannot bring you, if you go into a restaurant and you order food, the server's not going to know what you want. So you
Right.
got to be really specific about what it is and what your vision is and then feel the power of that. Feel the emotion of that. Why do you want that? Why is that important to you? What's that going to get you? How will you feel when you get there?
Mm.
That's really, really important. And then leverage. Leverage is going to be informed by the narcissist's diamond level supply. So, what is it? Of course, it's going to be image or reputation, but specifically with who? Who do they not want to look bad in front of? What do they not want exposed? Is it going to be their new girlfriend, or is it other people in their company, or is it the judge in a particular case, or is it, I mean, it could be multiple things,
Right.
but that's going to inform where you're going to go, because the coal level supply is you manipulating you, controlling you. And so what you want to do is threaten a source of supply that's more important for them to protect or defend than the supply that they get from
Mm.
manipulating you and jerking
Mm.
you around. So how do you
Yeah.
do that? You do that through documentation.
Yeah.
They always lie. They always say things that are inconsistent. It's very easy to document
Yeah.
a narcissist, very. In my Slay program, I have tools for all of this. And I have actually a really cool AI tool, by the way, that helps you take your
Mm.
documentation and turn it into leverage based on how I teach. And you can actually even ask it like, How should I respond to this email, or how should I respond to this text, or whatever, based on Rebecca's teachings. It's really pretty
Ooh,
cool.
I love that.
Yeah, it's
So
really pretty
that, yeah.
cool.
So that brings us to, where can people find you? How can they work with you? What are you doing? Are you speaking? Tell us about what and how and where platforms they can find you now.
So RebeccaZung.tv is my YouTube. My Instagram at Rebecca Zung. My website is RebeccaZung.com. I've got a ton of freebies on there, including phrases for disarming narcissists, which we were just talking
Oh,
about. So
yes.
if you go to disarmthenarc.com, you can get my free phrases for disarming narcissists. I should just
Mhm.
say A is anticipate and being two steps ahead of a narcissist, and Y is the you and focusing on your mindset and you being on the offensive instead of the defensive. So those are that's what SLAY stands for.
Yeah.
So
This is such great information. I mean, it's like packed full. There's not a little bit, it's packed full. I don't even know how long we've been on, but it's so insightful and so valuable. I mean,
mhm.
this is life-changing information.
Thank you.
Is there anything that you would add that we haven't covered that you want to say, that you want to share?
So, yeah, I just want to say you and you alone define your value, and people will think
Mm.
what you tell them to think.
Ah,
So, when I first started as my own law practice, I went out on my own. I had been a lawyer for a while, then I had been a stockbroker with Morgan Stanley for a little bit, and then I went back to being a lawyer. And I remember telling my business coach at the time, oh, people are going to think I'm such a flake. And she
mm.
said, well, you can tell them that you're a flake, or you can tell them to think that you are the only attorney that has a financial background, so you're actually more qualified than any other attorney in town. Which story would you like to tell? And so that's the story. That's the message that I went with. And within 2 years, I had the top family law practice in town in Naples, which was a very affluent community. And
Yeah.
um, people who were definitely not going to hire a flake were my clients, right? But if I had
Mm.
gone out there and been like, oh, I'm really sorry, I know I jump around, and I'm kind of, blah, that's what people would have seen. So
Yeah.
you can influence the energy of a room. You can influence the energy of conversations by deciding how you're showing up. Who
Mm.
is showing up? Who's leading the conversation? Don't let your trauma lead the conversation. Let your true
Mm.
self lead the conversation and influence your life that way.
I love that. I would say the last question I'm going to ask, because I always ask this, if you've watched my podcast, you'll know, is what in your life, and this can be across the board, business or personal, what in your life feels like love right now?
Feels like love?
Feels like love. What feels like love in your life right now?
Oh gosh, this is such a great question. No one's ever asked me this before.
Mm.
But, I would say for the first time in my life, I really love myself. And I can't say that I've ever felt like that, ever. And because of that, I have the best team. I have the best marriage. I have the best friends. I really
Mm.
have healthy relationships because I have a healthy relationship with myself for the first time. And that's taken a hell of a long time.
Yeah, I love that so much, because it speaks such volumes of truth. And I hope that, I mean, yeah, to leave it on that note, it's just like I almost want to cry. It's like, don't cry, Dana, don't cry. That was, yeah, that was powerful, because you've lived a really, really impactful life. But that, I don't know, that was the most impactful of all, of
Thank
sharing
you.
that.
Yeah, and that isn't even like for anyone else. For the
Yeah,
first time in my life,
yeah.
it's not, I just feel authentically who I am, which I can say I've never felt that way before.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I think that anyone that evolves into where we want to be or desire to be, whether we know it or not, subconscious or conscious, I would think is to live in that authentic self and accept who we are and what we
Mhm.
are
Mhm.
without any armor or explanation or this is
Yeah.
just the way I do things. This is just me. This is how
Yeah.
I show
And there's
up.
plenty of
Yeah.
people out there who don't like me, and that's okay. I'm
And
fine
that's
with
okay.
that.
Yeah. Oh,
Let them.
this
Let
has
them.
been let them. This has been such a great conversation. I mean, it's like we're gonna need a part two. I'm gonna need you back because I feel like we just like scratched the surface and there's so much more to talk about.
Oh, I'd be
So
happy
yeah,
to. I'm
I
going to have you on mine. We're going to talk about your new book. So exciting.
oh gosh, I'm so excited about that. I didn't think I would. I've been talking about it for 7 years and it's changed and evolved. And once I committed to it, now it's like the final chapter. I mean, it's finally happening. I'm like, I did it. I committed to the truth. But I think I had to find what that truth was first. Um, because there's so many stories that we want to put out there that might be watered down. This is not watered down. So yeah, that'll be a big conversation. I loved having you here. You are, well, I from the day I met you, I adored you. And
Thank
I
you.
loved
But I love your energy too. It's
well,
beautiful.
you're authentic, you're truthful, you're powerful. It's just this full package of stepping into your power and self. It's what we call a powerful woman is accepting everything and illuminating not only just your genius, but all the things that you learned along the way. You were willing to share and be transparent. And I love, love, love that vulnerability. I love it. So
Yeah.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you for being here. And yeah,
Thank you.
I can't wait to connect again.
You too. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, everybody, for showing up for the Dana Grant Show. You're going to want to download this. You're going to want to follow Rebecca. And I can guarantee you, if you find her on YouTube, you're going to like binge it. It is like binge worthy. So, everyone, thank you. Until next time.